Hello, everybody, and welcome to your post-day 20th. I am John Pollock, joined by WrestleNomics' own Brandon Thurston. We put out the bat signal on Thursday night. We knew that we had to bring Brandon in. Wei Ting is producing this show, so we will see if Wei Ting...
He's lurking in the shadows.
He's lurking, yes.
I saw him earlier.
Lurker today, yes. But the big question is, where is Stephanie McMahon-Levesque going? That was the question many people had after... maybe the most noteworthy tweet from a WWE individual this year, posting on Thursday at 4:30 Eastern Time. Interesting time to put this news out. As of tomorrow, I am taking a leave of absence from the majority of my responsibilities at WWE. WWE is a lifelong legacy for me, and I look forward to returning to the company that I love after taking this time to focus on my family. And with that, I think everyone was... this is a very easy tweet to certainly fuel enormous speculation when you're talking about such a high-ranking, front-facing executive for your company. In many ways, in the absence of Vince McMahon involved, or lack thereof, on a public level, Stephanie McMahon and to a lesser degree Nick Khan have become really the faces of the company. So, Brandon, you have done a lot of reporting already on this. What can you share thus far from what you have learned of what this means in the immediate future for WWE and where these responsibilities are going to be divided to?
Yeah, when you asked me to come on the show today, when you asked me yesterday, I had not seen yet Stephanie's tweet. I figured, I don't know, he just wants to talk about wrestling business, I guess. But then minutes later, I did see your tweet.
You're my go-to, Brandon. That's how quick I'm working here.
But so what I know so far is that Nick Khan, who of course is the president and chief revenue officer of WWE, he's going to be taking over most of Stephanie's duties. Stephanie's title is chief brand officer, if you're just joining us. Stephanie's going to remain a member of the board of directors. She's been a member of the board of directors since 2015. So if people aren't familiar with what the board of directors is comprised of, it's made up of some WWE executives, but also some people who do not work with WWE full-time, but work, like, for example, Erica Nardini, who's the CEO of Barstool Sports. She is an independent member of the board of directors. But Stephanie continues to be a member of the board of directors, I'm told. Business partners were contacted yesterday, or at least select business partners were contacted, and they were informed that Nick Khan would be overseeing most of her responsibilities. As of just a little while ago, I asked, and I've heard that there's no company-wide message yet that's been put out to employees. Employees found out about this news when she tweeted it. She tweeted it on Twitter, and she shared this, I believe, same message on LinkedIn also. She's quite active on LinkedIn. But yeah, I've been told, by WWE that she's just been working really hard for a long time. It seems that Paul Levesque's health played into this as well. But that's all we really know. We know that Paul Levesque appeared at the annual shareholders meeting that wasn't on the investor relations website, visible to everybody. But Slam Wrestling did have a report of someone who watched it. It was a virtual shareholders meeting, and Paul Levesque participated in that shareholders meeting. So he's seems to be working regularly, and I'm told he's working full time. He's not back to overseeing NXT in Orlando like he used to, but he's working as an executive again.
No, and that's all consistent with what I heard. I reached out to people at WWE, some of whom I did not get responses with, one of which I was alerting them for the first time about this Stephanie news, and the same this morning. They had not gotten any company-wide message, and I just find that interesting in the sense that here is a major executive, and the company has not issued any kind of press release or anything to that degree. And it's a pretty sizable news that you can go to their corporate site and you would have no knowledge of this beyond this tweet.
Yeah, and I can contrast it against the cardiac event that W disclosed that Paul Levesque had in September. They put out a press release in September when that, I don't know when exactly he started to have his health issues, but they put out a press release in September. From an investor point of view, Paul Levesque is not as high profile a person as Stephanie is, and from a business partner standpoint. But we still have no message here yet, either to employees overall or a press release beyond her social media posts.
One excerpt from today's Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer writes, most talent were most talent and those in the office and creative didn't know about it until they heard she tweeted it. There were definitely a few people who knew and knew the background, but they weren't saying much. Past there was more to it, but the basic reasons given were not inaccurate. The part about leaving to focus on her family is definitely part of it. It was obviously a tough year with Paul Levesque being out for so long, and she had to pick up a lot of his responsibilities and obviously had to deal from a family standpoint with his health issues. So, I mean, it's interesting in many different regards, Brandon. Number one is the fact that Nick Khan, who I would imagine already has a pretty sizable plate of responsibilities, is now going to be, at least in the interim, taking on more. And this is, the advertising and sponsorship area of the company. That has really been Stephanie's area, and one that they have earmarked for big growth over the next several years. So, I would assume as, you're a stockholder, you're at least left with that question of, is this, how, if this was a plan for, this did not come out of nowhere. That's what it sounds like. And just having more of a plan moving forward, like, yes, this is a shift temporarily, but this is the placement that we have. This is the order of delegation, and this is we are not going to skip a beat. And there's been none of that.
Yeah, the timing is conspicuous in that this happens at the end of the week that there were upfronts for Fox and NBC Universal, which of course are the broadcasters of Raw and SmackDown. Maybe they just wanted to get through this week, which is very important for making this presentation to advertisers and in partnership with your TV broadcasters. But that's over, and I would look back to May the 5th, and there was an earnings press release or an earnings report too. I wonder if sort of they looked at, well, let's get through these important events in May, and then maybe she'll make the announcement. I don't know, but it's that doesn't quite gel with no press release yet. But then again, she's not the CEO, but Paul Levesque is executive vice president, and they felt comfortable sending out a press release about that. I wonder if it is possible that we'll get an 8K. So an 8K is a SEC filing that publicly traded companies publish when they have any significant material news to report. For example, in WWE's history, when Vince McMahon sold a lot of stock to fund the XFL a few years ago, there was an 8K filing filed to inform investors about this event. If we get an 8K today about this, I would think it comes out just after the close of the market. That's when most of these things do come out. So I'll be looking at my email box for my email alert around 4:30 or something like that later today.
As we are recording this, it does not appear that this news has had any discernible effect on the stock. It's trading at just over $60. They have not reacted to this at all. And granted, this is definitely an not an apples to apples comparison, but when we saw the George Barrios, Michelle Wilson news, and granted that was two people leaving the company outright, major change, and this there has been no effect at all.
Right, and Barrios and Wilson were more of the investor, the face to the investors. George Barrios was the one who was always going to media conferences and things like that, and it did end up signaling a big change in their strategy as far as what they were going to do with their network content. But this doesn't seem to change strategy. It doesn't cause a lot of uncertainty for investors. You still got Nick Khan there, and I think as long as Nick Khan is there, investors seem to be pretty reassured.
For Stephanie, when you look at this history, like here's someone born into this family and has pretty much been attached to this company from like her high school years, maybe even before that, in appearing in like the catalog and such, like very much tied to the business. And since graduating university in 1998, a full-fledged member of this company, heading creative.
Ever since her best friend was Andre the Giant, yeah.
Her best friend, Andre the Giant, and then yes, her graduating university the same weekend that Vince McMahon couldn't go to Slamboree to beat up Eric Bischoff on pay-per-view. That was the conflict. He had to go to Stephanie's university graduation. And when you have someone that this is a high-stress situation for any individual, much less the daughter of the head of the company, I'm very curious about when she kind of takes her foot off of the gas pedal temporarily. She's 45. And what do you want to do with the next several decades of your career potentially, and what this time off means. Maybe it will mean nothing. Maybe this is just temporary. She comes back. But I think anytime you step away from something and you get away from the grind of it, you're naturally going to look at like what you want to do next and have that ability to look at kind of a larger view of your career, of your life, and what works for it.
Yeah, it leads to a lot of palace intrigue and a lot of speculation. And again, the thing that I've heard just from WWE media relations is that it's nothing more than she's been working really hard for a really long time and wants to spend more time with her family. It's hard not to imagine that there's more to it. She's been with WWE as an employee for decades. There's stories of how when people would so when they were kids and say that Shane is he gonna end up running the company someday, and Stephanie would speak up. And Shane has been out of the company as an executive since, I believe, 2009. And all indications for the longest time were that, well, maybe Stephanie, and now we saw that Paul Levesque, Triple H, is emerging into this creative role with WWE, that maybe they're two of the people who are really going to lead this company someday, even beyond the extent that they already do. But Stephanie taking a leave of absence here doesn't align with what I imagine of a McMahon family member in terms of the reputation of these are people who work tirelessly all the time. And I would have thought that she had the ambition to maybe become CEO of this company someday. That's not saying that she won't still. But this is surprising news that she's taking a temporary leave of absence. It's easy to imagine that maybe there were political struggles within WWE. We know that Triple H is no longer overseeing NXT in Orlando. NXT has clearly been revamped. His vision of what NXT is no longer the vision for NXT. And there seem to have been political forces that were, working to completely rehaul NXT. Is that related to this? I have no idea. Is WWE even going to be handed down to another McMahon family member after Vince? This makes me less confident, the news that came out yesterday. And then that leads me to wonder, well, if it's not, then are we getting any closer to M&A here, to WWE being acquired or merged with another company, and NBC Universal continues to be the leading candidate?
You've probably listened to as many Stephanie McMahon presentations as anyone out there. How would you assess her effectiveness in that role, very much as I would argue, like the public face of the company in many ways? Like Nick Khan does select interviews. Stephanie, not as many as kind of the peak when Barrios was out there quite a lot, but...
Yeah, what I see Stephanie doing a lot on LinkedIn is these... I don't know what exactly they are, these sort of virtual conferences that are, you have to register for them. So it's, I think I've looked into this, and sometimes you have to not only just register for free, but maybe your company has to pay something. So it's sort of, they put a quite high barrier to entry. But she's doing a lot of that.
Maybe you should look into these, Brandon. Maybe that can be another perk for you. Select fireside chats with Brandon Thurston.
Yes, it's a forthcoming tier of the Patreon.
Yes, the elusive tier.
Yeah, but she's been somebody who I understand she has a communications degree. She's somebody who's very much seems to be associated with their public relations and how they want to message things. And I've always been in awe of how Stephanie McMahon can say a lot of words and not say that much, but make you feel like she cares and she's paying attention.
Which is a skill. Like that is if you are in that position, that is a great skill to have, and is one that many people in similar positions are able to do very effectively and not be challenged at times on that.
For sure.
Well, it's a story that, obviously you're looking at the time frame and the way that this tweet was worded it's an indefinite period. When you're saying focus on your family, that's pretty open-ended. That there doesn't seem to be like, hey, this is going to be a 6-month issue, 9 months. It seems like they may not even know what time this is ultimately going to take. But yeah, I am very surprised that it's such a significant executive within the company that we are left with a tweet, and maybe that was obviously a strategy on their part, and the fact that the stock has not reacted to this in any meaningful way. So maybe there is a not the same level of urgency, at least from the financial community, about a major executive at least feeling the need to address this publicly, as opposed to just quietly taking a leave of absence and not noting it at all publicly.
Yeah, I think this is all we've heard, and the stock doesn't seem to be moving. But it's not like it's Vince apparently Vince, who is so important that they put in their risk factors that, you know, keeping and retaining his services are, if they lost them, that would be, you know, a detriment to the company and might result in differences in their financial results. But yeah, and I've had people raise to me that, well, it's sort of I think like a fantasy booking thing at this point, that, well, is Triple H and maybe even Stephanie now, they're going to go start their own wrestling company? I would think that at a minimum, if that was even something that was in the realm of possibility or the realm of their interest, that they would have probably a long non-compete, if not from their agreement as executives, but from their involvement in the board of directors. I would think they would have a lengthy non-compete if they wanted to do something like that. But Stephanie does have about 2.5% of the company's stock. She is the second largest non-institutional shareholder. So there are financial institutions that have more WWE stock than she does. But next, you know, behind Vince McMahon, and well behind Vince McMahon, who has about a third of WWE stock. She is the second largest shareholder. The value of her shares, as of the market value today, is about $116 million. So she's got over $100 million of market value if she wanted to liquidate her stock. Shane liquidated his stock. So Shane and Stephanie were both given, in my scouring of SEC filings, it appears that Vince and Linda gave Stephanie and Shane two very large stock gifts over the years. Shane apparently has liquidated all of his stock and perhaps used them in his other political activities. But Stephanie still has a lot of her stock, and her stock is Class B. Oh, there it is. There's the chart. Is that that's the old one? There's a newer one. It's not on the website though, because I haven't updated it. But there's a newer one on my Twitter. It's not very different though. This will suffice. They have Class B shares, but because Class B shares mean that they get 10x the voting rights of every other normal shareholder. McMahon family members get 10x the rights because of the Class B shares that they own, and because of the large number of shares that Vince owns, which are Class B shares. He owns about 80% of the voting power. So Vince is, and for the foreseeable future, will be in control of this company.
Yeah, and also worth noting that Stephanie McMahon, like Paul Levesque, they also have booking contracts with the company as well that just effectively roll over every year, but that's also figured into her overall salary, even though her on-screen presence is virtually nothing at this point. But great gig if you can swing it.
Yeah, I mean, that gets disclosed in the proxy statement. We just had a proxy statement in April. I don't have it in front of me, so it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars that they get in what we call a downside guarantee. That's what Triple H will probably be paid largely for his entrances at WrestleMania this year.
Yes. I know that this is, the kind of story where you can just go off into lots of speculative territory. But I would say for Stephanie, I'd be very curious at how she looks at, in a non-WWE world, if she has any aspirations of politics or launching her own media company. I don't think wrestling is necessarily that post WWE fantasy. But I mean, when you look at all the different fellowships that she has done and the name that she has cultivated in this community, it just makes you wonder if she is certainly young enough that there could certainly be another act in her career if it is not WWE, and that's
philanthropy. Something in philanthropy seems like something that would be up her alley. Politics, I did see some people suggest maybe it's maybe she's following in Linda's footsteps here. And I've looked at the FEC records. I did check yesterday just to see if there were any new FEC campaign contributions that she had made, and there was nothing new. She and Paul Levesque made some campaign contributions around the time that Linda ran for Senate twice in Connecticut, and and they both made contributions to various Republican Party related causes at that time, but nothing new within, I would say, at least since 2015, and probably earlier than that. They haven't at least contributed to campaigns that have ended up in the FEC record.
So we will see what the next chapter is. Maybe we will just get the Michael Jordan "I'm back" tweet.
I'm still waiting for Stephanie's book. I was told.
Where is Lady Balls?
Lady Balls is going to come out, I don't know, quite a while ago now, probably like 5 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, I think her and Paul Heyman's book and that Max Payne documentary, they're all in the same kind of holding pattern.
I hope she uses this time to write a very honest autobiography. I would be very excited to read that.
Yes. A Stephanie McMahon corporate speech version of a book. I don't know. That would be a little challenging, or that would be tough, as Nick Khan says. That's tough.
Tough, yes.
I wanted to get some of your action as well. Of course, we had the various upfront presentations this past week, mainly centered around NBC Universal, Fox, and then the Warner Brothers Discovery presentation on Wednesday, and all of the dissections of what does this mean? What does a graphic of Red Velvet mean? What does the AEW representation or lack thereof at this presentation mean? Did you put a little stock into Wednesday's presentation? Again, it is one that I think you're kind of left with it. If you want to argue either way, that's fine. But do you have major takeaways from Wednesday?
It means something. Let's take the WWE case first. Is that I think so? Who are the talent from WWE who were there? The Miz, Bianca Belair, Roman Reigns, and Charlotte Flair. There were 2 of them to each network, right? And that signals to me that these are the big stars. Maybe there were others that could have filled that role too, but those are 4 people who they see as really big stars. And in a world where less and less of the percentage of a company's revenue is coming from fans and ticket sales and merchandise sales and things like that, and more of it is coming from TV networks and other business partners. That means a lot, and it's not as exciting to think about in terms of like who's going to main event WrestleMania. But I think those people are really valuable to them. It's sort of more valuable than the titles that people wear. And then the AEW or lack of AEW representation at the Warner Brothers Discovery upfront is conspicuous. I think it tells you that, especially if you contrast the 2 cases, that the Fox and NBCU look at WWE as a much bigger deal to them than Warner Brothers Discovery considers AEW, which aligns with sort of what I perceive as their respective name ID and their brand recognition and culture. I did see there was a clip of some HBO show where somebody's referencing AEW and Roman Reigns recently, right? That's making the rounds on Twitter yesterday.
Yes.
I don't know what that was, but AEW is a company that's only 3 years old. Maybe if they continue to run as a strong wrestling company, they will continue to enter the everyday conversation. But they're far from a name brand and far from a household name. John Cena was there though. Who's the biggest star? Who's the biggest wrestling star in the Warner Brothers Discovery universe? It's John Cena.
That's it. Two presentations he made on stage. He was there for Peacemaker and then back for Wipeout as well. So yeah, John Cena was the most prominent wrestling adjacent figure at the Warner Brothers Discovery presentation on Wednesday.
Right. And it's not a presentation that we saw publicly or that we could watch, but there were people who were there, especially media reporters, stock analysts I know were there, and there's if people haven't seen it, there's a screen at some point of various sports figures, and Red Velvet is one. There's like a clip of a moonsault I heard, but not beyond that, not much. And I know Dave Meltzer has reported that there was a lot of back and forth in terms of what AEW believed the planning was going to be, as far as was their presence, was AEW's presence at this upfront going to be a lot or a little? It went back and forth, and I heard that too. And it ended up being not very much at all. It was on a Wednesday, so we have that excuse that, hey, look, we were doing TV in Houston that night. But considering how
but to the NBC
is,
point, I mean, they got 2 talents there, and they were both on Raw that night. And to me, this would be something that I would break up my television if the network wanted someone there. It's like, okay, we might have an angle for match tonight. We can certainly spare that.
Absolutely. When that's 50% of your revenue or more than 50% of your revenue, you can definitely send whoever it would be. I don't know if CM Punk. So like who aligns with
Punk
four?
walks out with John Cena. They talk about Wipeout. Then they move over to Dynamite, and the two of them are just up on the stage reminiscing about the good old days.
And like you guys talked about before, the announcement that Dynamite was going to be a show was something that was made at, I believe, the 2019 Upfront.
Yes.
And there's, it's an image that comes up a lot when I'm Googling stuff. There's these pictures of Tony Khan and Britt Baker and Cody and Brandy, maybe others, at the Upfronts. So they've definitely had a presence before, but not this time. And this is just after the merger, where there's other reasons to look at the relationship between AEW and its TV network as uncertain, because there's been a merger, and that changes a lot of the leadership. And we just heard that Brett White's, who was I believe his title was general manager of the T-Nets, TNT, TBS, and True TV, he's out. So what does that mean for the future of AEW's relationship with their biggest TV partner? I've asked, and somebody at AEW told me that no, it's not going to be a big deal. So we'll see.
And just to bring everyone up to speed on the timeline of the most recent deal that they have, this goes through the end of 2023, and then we have the option year for 2024, correct? And that presumably would be a network call on the option year.
That's my impression for sure.
Yes.
For all I know, that could have been renewed. The option could have been enacted already, but I have no idea. Could be.
Right. Well, it's obviously that's a major story to follow on both ends about the latest media rights. On Wednesday, Dynamite did a 922,000 viewers, so they were up 10% this week, and this was going against the Golden State Dallas game, doing 430,000 viewers in the 18 to 49. Always a great breakdown by Brandon Thurston. I encourage everyone to check out the viewership spreadsheet that WrestleNomics patrons get every week. Look at these beautiful graphs of week-to-week comparisons.
Just posted quarter hours too. The quarter hours are there too.
The quarter-hour breakdowns are there. I looked at this as like very good, going against a much stronger NBA game this week than last week, and as well, the NHL is picking up in the U.S. as well. When you see both of those NHL games finishing ahead of AEW, so the sports competition was much more significant this week than last. And the fact is, AEW, they maintained their demo number and grew their overall audience. So I think if you are Warner Brothers Discovery, that's a lot of real estate that you have in those top 8 cable properties.
Yeah, they finished, as people can see on the screen, number 7 among cable originals in the demo for the day. That's substantially lower than they usually finish. Now there is a monster NBA game there, which did 2.2 rating, 6.5 million viewers. But it's a lot of sports competition. They've been doing about the same demo number for 4 weeks in a row. This is all in this era where I think they've, without exception, in these recent weeks have gone against NBA playoff games, and now going against some deeper into the playoffs NHL games too. But yeah, I've talked with somebody who used to work in TV about, does the Brett White's exit, does that cast uncertainty upon AEW? And this person's impression was that, usually when you've got something that's doing good ratings, which even though we can compare AEW to WWE, and certainly in terms of total viewership, SmackDown, for example, is doubling anything that Dynamite does. But usually when you've got a program that's doing pretty good viewership, everybody at the network, this person said, is an advocate for the program. So you have to look at it as, if they're going to not renew AEW, then what's the strategy? What goes in its place? And when we look at what was in the place of 8 to 10 on Wednesday night on TBS before Dynamite, before this year, and it was The Big Bang Theory. And Dynamite is doing a slightly better demo rating, a few points better than what Big Bang Theory was doing in the same time slot. I did look at this, and I busted out the spreadsheets and ran the pivot tables. By a few points, Dynamite is ahead. Big Bang Theory would do something in the high 20, the high 2.0s and the low 3.0s, and we're on the lower end of the range of what Dynamite usually does here with all the playoff games that it's going against. So usually it does a little better. We'll see what happens when the playoffs are over with.
Yeah, I think like the most telling is just some of these public comments that David Zaslav, who's the president and CEO of Discovery Warner Brothers, is indicating that we are not going to be just throwing crazy money.
Cost, discipline.
Yeah, those are words you don't want to be hearing
Jesus,
if you're looking for a renewal. So I think that is certainly concerning when you're looking at this giant merger, and they are looking to slash costs at an alarming rate, it sounds like, and they are not just going with this idea of loss leaders to build theoretical streaming, a giant streaming base of subscribers. They're going to be very disciplined with their spending, and you would have to think that if there's anything to loosen all the purse strings for, it's when the NBA rights come up, and that will be where they put everything towards. And hopefully there is an AEW strategy, but I can't see that being the priority over this disciplined cost structure that they seem to be indicating they are going towards.
And cost discipline is something that Zaslav has talked about on earnings calls before this Netflix story unfolded, where Netflix appears to be saturated. Certainly, looking at some of the Netflix data recently, it looks like you could get the impression that in the U.S.-Canada region that they report, they were pretty saturated for a while. But on the worldwide basis, I guess that all plays into it, because there are many of these streaming services are distributed worldwide. But maybe that throws sort of industry-wide uncertainty into the calculation about how much you're going to spend on content here, if the change in behavior maybe isn't going to be as complete as some people thought. And I was tweeting yesterday too. You look at the TV viewership trends year over year, and I'm even seeing in 18 to 34, so young adults, that seems to be leveling off on a year over year basis. Maybe that's misleading because the playoffs are placed in different months this year versus last year, but it's something to watch for. In that, it's been a really strong decline for 18 to 34, and to a lesser extent for 18 to 49. And we'll see how that plays out over time. I'm starting to wonder if we're seeing sort of the normalization of some consumer behavior when it comes to watching TV and watching streaming. In that, maybe there'll be slow incremental changes over time, but I don't know that we're going to live in a world where like TV becomes, linear TV, traditional TV through the coaxial cable is going to become a thing of the past, and that these two different forms of media just become complementary to each other in some way. But yeah, but anyway, the notion that streaming is maybe not as big of an opportunity as some people thought does maybe reduce the extent to which major media companies are going to be willing to spend on content, and maybe it reduces the opportunity that's there for wrestling companies if as Nick Khan has speculated, as I've speculated, that maybe there's an opportunity for WWE or AEW to put some of their content on streaming, which brings in more bidders, which maybe even brings the bids up, because maybe they're bidding higher because the content creator sees that there's risk there because they're not getting the high reach, the large audience. We're talking about something on a streaming platform that may be in 20 million households versus a major TV network that's going to be in about 80 million households. So that may change the potential to which these companies are able to attract high TV rights. That said, these are still very popular programs, both W and AEW, in the grand scheme of at least cable.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Has Brandon Thurston jumped onto the Drive to Survive craze yet? Have you given in to all of the buzz that is out there?
I feel like I should, just to study it and to see what the big deal is and how everybody thinks they're going to copy it and become almost as successful.
It's quite the program. I don't think it's as easy as just snapping your fingers and you can copy this format. I mean, it's been revolutionary for F1, but we will see what impact. It's the Spanish Grand Prix on Sunday morning, Brandon.
I think that there's a really exciting reality TV story to tell about WWE's corporate picture right now. What's going on here? I hope they're filming. I hope it's maybe that would be their next big hit series, I think.
Well, we are going to wind things down. Way and I are going to be back tonight with a Rewind a SmackDown, and we've got the potential title unification match between RK Bro and the Usos on SmackDown from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I think more interesting will be whatever handling, if at all, of the Naomi Sasha Banks situation, if the title belts are addressed, if anything is said on the program. And, from all reports, it was going to be Sasha Banks challenging Ronda Rousey at the next pay-per-view, Hell in a Cell, in 2 weeks. So you would, in theory, have to get another challenger up and ready on tonight's show. So I think there will be some curiosity about how all of that is handled tonight. Meanwhile, on Rampage, it is the taped show from Wednesday night, featuring Red Velvet and Chris Statlander in the Owen Hart Cup. Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, and his ankle will be taking on the Ring Apron, accompanied by Matt Sydal and Dante Martin. Sean Spears will be taking on a Giant, not the Giant, but a Giant. Scorpio Sky demands the return of the TNT Championship. The House of Black taking on Evil Uno, Preston Vance, and Fuego del Sol, and a video of Danhausen and Hook, airing at 7 Eastern tonight on TNT. So we will be live at 10 Eastern tonight for members at postwrestlingcafe.com. And with this being a free show, if you would like to support postwrestlingcafe.com, we have many bonus shows up, including going back to Thursday, Raw Thursday from February of 1997, Shawn Michaels losing his smile and diving deep into that entire segment, a really fascinating one to look back at 25 years later. So you can check out that, as well as the latest edition of The Wellness Policy with Wei Ting, joined by Jordan Goodman, Eli, who was a tremendous guest, chatting about comedy, the art of comedy. So a great show to check out that is free for everybody on the both the Patreon feed and youtube.com/postwrestling. But the final word goes to Brandon Thurston. I am sure that this could be a packed. I think you might hit the 2-hour mark on Sunday.
Maybe.
This is a big,
I don't want to interrupt you.
WrestleNomics.
I didn't want to interrupt you a minute ago. You're doing that match rundown. You're going to give Excalibur a run for his money there.
I know. It's that's why I got the double liquids here with water to get through the whole rundown. It's a lot. I sympathize for the man at the end of every Dynamite, what he has to tee up, especially around pay-per-view time.
Yeah. So we'll be doing WrestleNomics this Sunday. Chris Gull will be back. We'll be talking about this. We'll be talking about the upfronts. And you always set me up to do these important plugs, and I should. But I'm like, I don't know. I'll be building the slides today and tomorrow. But we'll be talking about all the news and wrestling business in the prior 7 days as of Sunday. So that's on the Post Wrestling feed. It's on the WrestleNomics feed. It will be streaming it live on YouTube at 11 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning.
Yes, and in my best Excalibur, patreon.com/WrestleNomics. Get the viewership spreadsheet. Get the quarter-hour breakdowns. Who is a draw? Brandon Thurston answers it every single week. Who is the draw? Acknowledge him. Brandon Thurston. Check him out. Always great to have you on, Brandon, for these discussions, because it's I feel these are some of the stories that people have the most intrigue about, and this was a tweet that has left everyone asking the same question the Undertaker did when he abducted her in 1999. Where to, Stephanie? Where to? That is the big question.
Yeah.
That's going to wrap things up, everybody. Thank you to Wei Ting for pressing all the magic buttons behind the scenes, and for Brandon Thurston joining me. We'll speak with you tonight on Rewind to SmackDown, and that concludes your post-daily news show.